The Shadow Attorney General, Julian Leeser, joined me a short time ago from Sydney. Julian Leeser, welcome to Afternoon Briefing. Quite pertinent having you on the program today, given the committee is currently examining the National Anti-Corruption Commission legislation. You've been quite outspoken on this issue of exceptional circumstances for public hearings, and in particular wanting independent judges brought in to decide whether or not there are actually exceptional circumstances. Won't that, as the Attorney-General Mark Dreyfus says, further bog down the Commission in legal technicalities?
No, it won't, Matt. I mean, this is basically just the warrant process. What we are effectively asking for is that there are a range of factors that need to be determined before a public hearing is commenced under the government's Corruption Commission legislation. Exceptional circumstances is one of those factors. But we think because the Commission has extraordinary powers, because the Commission has funding of over $200 million, the Commission will have a particular interest in having public hearings. And we think as an additional safeguard, and it's the same position that the South Australian Bar Association has adopted, we think an independent judge should make the assessment as to whether the factors that are listed in the legislation, including exceptional circumstances, including whether it's in the public interest, including issues around reputation, safety and well-being of the relevant people, have been properly taken into account. We think these matters are better dealt with by an independent judicial officer.
Given the fact that the National Commission itself would be independent of government, independent of other arms of the judiciary, would such a move actually undermine its independence, bringing in judges to act as this final gatekeeper?
Not at all. It would actually bolster the independence. It would ensure that the public had confidence that before any public hearing occurred, that the Commission, or that a judicial officer, not the Commission, who's spent all the time using its extraordinary powers to collect evidence. Remember, it's got extraordinary powers such that people don't have the right to remain silent. The privilege against self-incrimination is abrogated. Legal professional privilege is abrogated. So we believe that having a separate judicial officer determine whether the grounds are being made out for a public hearing is very important. I think often people think, when they are thinking about these corruption commissions, that these just apply to politicians, but they apply to every public officer in the Commonwealth, everyone from the cook, the gardener, the cleaner at Parliament House, people who are contracting and subcontracting with the Commonwealth, anybody who's exercising a power under the law of the Commonwealth, so that's everyone from people working in the NDIS, aged care nurses and pharmacists. The only people it doesn't apply to are judges and union officials.
On this broader issue of a National Corruption Commission being established, it seems as though your leader, Peter Dutton, has effectively said that the Coalition will get behind it. Obviously, there needs to be, in your view, some tinkering on the proposal, but it seems like Peter Dutton is pretty keen to get this off the political agenda. Is this a situation where the Coalition is being forced to read the room, considering it lost so much skin at the last election to candidates who were campaigning on an anti-corruption platform?
Not at all. I mean, we support an anti-corruption commission. We've done so at the last two elections. In fact, we were the party that brought about Australia's first anti-corruption commission in New South Wales more than 30 years ago. People who break the law should face the law. But we have had 30 years of experience of these corruption commissions. Some of the experience has been very mixed, and some of it's been particularly bad. We've seen more than a dozen people die by suicide as a result of appearing before these commissions across the country. We've seen people's reputations absolutely trashed by the commissions, and there be no public prosecution that's occurred as a result of it, or prosecutions that have occurred that have failed. So what we want to do is ensure that we use the committee process to ensure that there are adequate safeguards in place, to ensure that we get the detail of the commission right. We support there being a national commission, but there are many people of standing who have real concerns about the way the commission is designed. That's why there's been such strong submissions by bodies like the Law Council of Australia, like the Council for Civil Liberties of Queensland, like the South Australian Bar Association, and like the inspectors in Victoria and New South Wales and the former National Security Legislation Monitor, all of whom have questioned some aspects of the way in which this commission has been established.
Do you think the former Prime Minister made an error in not allowing his model to be debated in the last Parliament?
Well, look, that time has passed at any rate. We are dealing now with
Surely you have an opinion though, Julian Leeser?
Put forward by the Labor government. Well, look, I'm interested. I'm now the Shadow Attorney General. I'm interested in dealing with the legislation that is before us, and that's the legislation that I'm focused on. And it's our job to ensure that while we get a corruption commission, that we've properly considered the 30 years of experience. We've properly considered many of the issues around it, like ensuring that there are adequate appeal rights, ensuring that people who appear before the commission have the right to access funds to pay for adequate legal representation, to ensure that people cannot bring vexatious complaints before the commission, to ensure that the inspectors that are looking at the commission are exercising their powers properly, to see that the commission is abiding by the law, because it is such a powerful commission. This is one of the most powerful bodies in Australia, and it surprises me that the Labor Party and the Greens and the crossbench are not more concerned about the civil liberties of Australians who might get caught up in this commission, who might have their phones tapped, who might have their communications intercepted, who might be dragged off the street in order to appear as a witness in this corruption commission process. And I think it's really important, particularly because there's been no exposure draft, that this committee inquiry really analyses the provisions of this commission to ensure that the safeguards are actually adequate.
Let's move on to another area within your shadow portfolio responsibilities, which is the debate about an Indigenous voice to Parliament. Do you foresee a situation where members of the coalition would be allowed to exercise a conscience vote on this issue, rather than there being an opposition-wide position on going forward on this issue of a referendum?
Well, Matt, our position has always been that we are keeping an open mind about this issue, but we're waiting the detail, and we won't consider those issues until we've seen the detail appear before us, and we are still waiting for that detail from the government. They've given us a question. They're now talking about the mechanics around the referendum, but they haven't answered some of the fundamental questions around who will be on this body, how will they be chosen, what will its powers and functions be. And until they do that, and until they produce legislation that demonstrates how this will work, it's very hard for us to make a decision on it. And that's why we're keeping an open mind, and we are awaiting more information from the government.
So you won't have any position on the proposal until that detail is provided? You're going to put it off until the government come forward and say and answer those questions for you?
Well, that's been our position. We want to give the government the space to develop this proposal. I'm in regular discussions with Linda Burney and Pat Dodson, who have carriage of this matter. As you know, I've been a supporter of the concept of the voice from the period before I became Shadow Attorney, in fact before I even entered the Parliament. But it's really important that we get the detail right about this, and it amazes me that Labor has spent time, doing everything else on this issue except answering the question about how this body will actually work.
Do you think there's a risk that if a conscience vote was allowed, and I know that we are dealing with an argument that you're saying is down the track, but if a conscience vote within your party is allowed, that there could be a fracturing of voices on the voice, and that could actually harm any campaign, whether it's the Yes campaign or the No campaign?
Look, I just think it's premature to be talking about these things. We do want to give the government the space to develop this position properly. We want to encourage them to put in place processes whereby people can debate the amendment that they've put forward, perhaps suggest alternative amendments. But at the moment they don't have any of that, and I don't really want to deal with these questions until such time as we've exhausted what it is that they're actually going to put forward.
Just briefly before we go, this announcement this morning from the Foreign Minister, Penny Wong, that Australia is reversing the decision made under the Morrison government to recognise West Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. You are one of the Jewish members of the Australian Parliament, so no doubt you have an opinion on whether or not this is an appropriate thing to be doing?
Well, this is a shambolic decision-making process, Matt. 3 positions in 24 hours on this issue. In the Jewish press before the election, Mark Dreyfus and Josh Burns said that there was no difference between the Morrison government's policy on Israel and the Albanese opposition. This shows that that's just not true. West Jerusalem has been part of Israel since the establishment of the State of Israel in 1948. The Parliament is there, the Supreme Court is there, the Prime Minister lives there, the President lives there. It looks like the capital of Israel to me. I don't know what it is the Labor Party can't see.
Julian Leeser, thank you for your time today.
Thanks so much.